Hello children, let's continue the chapter digestive system. In last video we were talking about salivary glands. In this video let us learn the three types of salivary glands. Salivary glands are of three types, that is parotid glands, submandibular glands and sublingual glands. Let's see the position of these glands. Parotid glands, which is present just in front of and beneath each ear. Submandibular gland, which is present close to the inner side of the lower jaw on each side, and sublingual, which is present below the tongue. Now all the three salivary glands, three types of salivary glands, secrete their secretion, that is saliva, directly to the mouth by the help of the ducts. As if we are talking about saliva, saliva is nothing but a liquid which is, or the watery substance which is secreted inside our mouth, that contains an enzyme which is known as salivary amylase, and this salivary amylase can also be called as ptyalin. What is the work of saliva? Moistures and lubricates the mouth and facilitates speaking and swallowing. Acts as a solvent, helps the food particles to stick together to form bolus. So the broken particles of the food that mixes with the saliva to form bolus, so that easily the body can swallow, or the mouth can swallow that food inside the body. Cleans the mouth and destroy germs. Dryness in mouth gives a feeling of thirst. So these are the functions of saliva, and remember it contains enzyme which is known as salivary amylase. So let us see what is the work of salivary amylase. Salivary amylase helps in the breakdown of starch to give maltose. Starch is a carbohydrate that is present in a complex form. So in that case, what we can see, that the salivary amylase or the saliva that break down the starch to give maltose. Now we'll be studying about swallowing. So if you can see the diagram here, this is the oral cavity, means the mouth, and from here the food has to be carried to the esophagus. This is the entrance of the esophagus, and this is the entrance of trachea. Now the entrance of trachea is guided by a flap-like structure, or a muscular flap which is known as epiglottis. Now epiglottis prevents the food to enter inside the trachea. So when the food is being swallowed by a person, eventually what happens? The food pushes the epiglottis downward and it blocks the path of trachea, and because of this what happens? The food moves to the esophagus. So this is the work, or this is a function of epiglottis, that closes the opening of trachea and tries to push the food towards the esophagus. There is a voice box located in front of the windpipe, in the entrance of the windpipe, that is known as larynx, and this larynx helps to speak. Okay, now we'll be talking about the next organ, that is esophagus. Esophagus connects buccal cavity to the stomach. Buccal cavity, that is mouth to the stomach, you can see the structure here. Esophagus is a muscular in form. It doesn't contain any enzyme, so there is no digestion in it. Only the food moves from the buccal cavity to the stomach by the help of a movement that is known as peristalsis movement. Now let us study what is peristalsis movement. In this case, what happens, where the bolus is present, at that bolus means the food is present, at that time that region expand. The muscular structure of the esophagus expand and the rest region contract. When the food bolus moves downward, so the region where it is present, that region expand and the previous region where it was present will contract. And so happens as the food continues to move downwards towards the stomach. So this wave-like formation, wave-like constriction caused by the circular muscles of the gut pushing the food along, this is known as peristalsis movement. Then we'll be talking about stomach, the next organ. Stomach is an elastic bag which is present below the diaphragm. Now, the stomach walls are highly muscular and churn the food thoroughly to mix with the gastric juices secreted by the inner lining. So, the inner lining of the stomach secretes gastric juice, and because of the help of presence of these gastric juice, the food gets thoroughly mixed with each other with the gastric juice and the further digestion takes place. Now you can see here is a sphincter present, and that is known as spiralic sphincter, and here is a sphincter present which is known as esophageal sphincter, which prevent the backflow of food to the esophagus, and here it prevents the food to move to the next organ. Now here you can see that the stomach contains gastric juice secreted by the inner lining of the stomach. It contains water, some salts, HCl, and two types of enzymes, that is pepsin and renin. Let us see what is the function of HCl. HCl is an acid which kills the germs as well as activates the enzymes, which is previously in the form of inactive form. So if we see here the reaction that is taking place in the stomach, that is these two are the enzyme. This is the inactive enzyme, that is pepsinogen, that is converted to pepsin in the presence of HCl, and then the pepsin, that is the enzyme, activated enzyme, helps in the conversion of proteins to give peptides. The second enzyme which is present in the stomach is prorenin, that is in inactive form. Because of the presence of HCl, will convert it into renin, prorenin to renin in the presence of HCl, and then this renin helps in the breakdown of milk protein, that is casein, to form paracasein. Okay, or we can call it as a curd. So in this case, what we can see, HCl, first of all, it helps in killing the germs, and in second case, it helps in converting the inactive enzymes to an active form, so that the enzymes can act upon the substances and can break down those substances into a simpler form. So this was the function of stomach, and the gastric juices secreted by the stomach containing HCl and the enzyme, that is pepsin and renin. Now let us talk about small intestine, the next organ. It has three subregions. First is duodenum, second is jejunum, and the third one is ileum. Just after the stomach starts the duodenum part, and then comes the convoluted part, highly convoluted part, that is the jejunum, and then comes the ileum, which then joins to the large intestine. So the innermost lining of the ileum is produced into a greater number of tiny projections, that is called villi. Inside the villus there are different the variety of things present, that is the artery, vein, interconnecting blood capillaries and lymph vessels, and together that is known as lacteal. So Small intestine that helps both in digestion and absorption, and the last digestion takes place in small intestine. So small intestine that receives two types of juices, that is bile and pancreatic juice in duodenum part, and intestinal juice that is secreted by the walls of the intestine in the ileum part. So as we know, the juices which are secreted, that is bile, pancreatic juice and intestinal juice inside the small intestine. Bile and pancreatic that is secreted in duodenum part of the small intestine, intestinal juice secreted in the ileum part. So in our next video, we'll be talking about the functions of this bile, pancreatic juice and intestinal juice.